The infinity loop is the tools of communication that heals and glues society back together. Our podcast is about disruption. We disturb the system that says it's normal and okay to communicate in the old, tired, ineffective, and unintelligent ways. There's a cynical belief rooted in so many of us in which we've told ourselves we can't help how we think or behave because our brains are so wired to react from low-level consciousness that's habitual and automatic. We're coming from our egos where they're running the show and not the infinity loop, where the ego is in a helpful place as a healthy sense of self, so it can help us be in our connected, abundant selves. We're saying by intentionally stepping into the infinity loop, we can affect every interaction we have and change the world. The Infinity Loop Group podcast is going to be about moving from the either-or to both-and way of thinking, where we transcend and include, as Ken Wilber teaches, in which we transcend the limitations of the old masculine and old feminine, but include what is healthy and helpful. What will emerge is a new, balanced, and integrated masculinity and femininity. The time has come where the divine feminine way of being is going to arise. We must learn from it as we let our old ways die, so a new human is resurrected and transfigured. That new human will truly change the world. This podcast is also about having a growth mindset, which hungers to love well while practicing elegant and intelligent self-care. We face our wounds, egos, and shadows in preparation to give this life everything we've got to make the world more connected and beautiful, because we're more connected and beautiful.
Welcome to the Infinity Loop Group podcast. I'm Riley Burns.
And I'm Krista Vorse.
We're going to dive into the Infinity Loop for women. It's how to find the divine feminine that is in all of us.
I dedicate this book to my younger self and the woman being burned at the stake.
Let's get down and dirty with the first chapter, Down and Dirty. Starting with a quote from Bell Hooks. In the dominator model, the pursuit of external power, the ability to manipulate and control others, is what matters most. When culture is based on a dominator model, not only will it be violent, but it will be a frame for all relationships as power struggles. And I find it really interesting how our culture has almost used the victimhood to create the ability to dominate, right? It's like, I'm the victim, so I have the right to dominate you or tell you what you're doing wrong because something has been done to me wrong, maybe in the past, and it might not even be you. Or if it is you, it's a way of kind of getting back at you, a way of, like you said, using the power to control and make it a struggle.
Okay, that is, I'm so happy you said that, because I wrote this book in 17 and it's now 23. So I started this book 6 years ago, and it was when the whole Me Too movement was coming out, and I was seeing where women were speaking up with retaliation. It was the way that is this tricky thing about the whole flipping of the oppressed and the oppressor. And I very much affirm where women are coming from, where I am coming from, my own personal struggles with men, where I have felt very unhealthy, in an unhealthy way, dominated and not treated in a healthy way. Let's just say that.
Well, it's not denying the fact that women have been oppressed, but how do they then not become the oppressors? Right? As the power shifts, and I think the power shift is wonderful. I think it is beautiful. I think we need the more compassion from our rulers, which is kind of where we're moving with having this balance of the masculine and feminine.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like what this first chat or first even paragraph kind of dives into of how as women are being put into leadership positions, they aren't actually leading from their divine feminine. They are leading from the old masculine way, just as a male. And
Some women.
right.
Yeah.
I mean, I
Yeah.
guess the women that we would claim that we don't like when someone goes, "Oh, she's a bitch." Is it that she's a bitch, or is it that she's telling you something you don't want to hear, or
Mm-hmm.
is it that she is just modeling a way to lead that is a more masculine way that
Or
is not serving us as
yeah,
a community
and
anymore,
maybe not even say in more masculine way, Riley,
or a more
but it
dominator way?
or the unhealthy masculine, the
Very
part
well
that is
put.
not yet integrated. Because to be very, very clear at the beginning, the infinity loop loves men
And women.
and women.
It's
Like,
about identifying the negative of both
mhm.
and how do we combine the best of both.
And having and up leveling it,
Mm,
having it evolve to the next level, not just go, oh, that's good, that's bad, let's bring those two together. It's going to it's going to look different.
a higher level of awareness.
It's a higher level of awareness, the capacity to see what I would call infinity loop eyes.
Mm.
So so that, and we're going to go, as we go through, we're going to examine, oh, where's the language changed even the last 6 years where that's no longer helpful, or where. So that's the whole learning we're going to go through. So we're fed up with whatever men do that bugs us, and we've decided we've had enough. It's time to lay out what they do wrong. We correct them, act parental, and think that's the right thing. There's no connection, no awareness, and no inquiry. That's being a strong woman, we've been told. It may feel right, even though it's not the most emotionally intelligent or effective way to communicate. Even if we get compliance, our relationships aren't strengthened. That's not the infinity loop.
So, I mean, that's my favorite phrase is altering our communication of projection into connection, right?
Yeah, that's what you say, which is so good.
So often people right now are they say, "Oh, I'm a great communicator," and they see that as a way of, "Oh, I'm really good at expressing how I feel about something,"
Mm,
as if being an emotional vomit on someone makes you a good communicator. But really, a good communicator is the ability to help someone understand where you're coming from and be able to understand where someone else is coming from. And so to me, that is where the infinity loop has helped me and where we'd like to help others. How can we use this language to connect, not project?
awesome. And I would say when we get to the place where we're telling somebody off, it's we have missed all the other opportunities that were most likely there before, that we didn't speak up in connection and awareness and inquiry. It just got to the point of like, okay, I've had enough, blah, 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 blah. And we miss those opportunities. That's our leadership invitation.
Right. Well, so it's if you once we talk about creating a container to talk about difficult things so that someone doesn't feel attacked. And when you can bring up the difficult things more as they come about, then they things don't build up for you to have to explode on someone.
I love it. And those things are brought up in connection.
Right, not in a blaming, making someone bad, but always in the place of, I understand that we both respect and appreciate each other and are both trying to do better by each other. And so, how we interact with any situation is kind of always changing. So, it is just
Mm,
as much our responsibility to communicate how we're feeling about something as it is for them to adjust how they interact with you based on those things.
amen. Amen. In the infinity loop, we step into a structure that becomes second nature. It's our check in with ourselves to become connected and aware every time we engage. It's a discipline to retrain our brains. We break habits and cultural taboos as we're open hearted and vulnerable. We're aware of what's going on under the turbulence. Our truest selves want something better than an ego win where we never ultimately win. And we were talking about that, how it does feel really good. It feels great to have that coming from the ego and kind of put someone in their place because the ego feels good.
Well, the people that I see that are going through the most suffering are usually addicted to their negativity. They're addicted to how um, belittling or putting other people down makes them feel, how creating drama, right? All these,
Mm,
like the people that claim to not like drama are usually the people that are in the most drama. And that's because they actually do like drama. They
mhm,
just don't realize that what the aspects of the drama that they're addicted to, like
mhm.
that ego hit.
Yeah, the
Um,
ego hit. And that's the infinity loop, is learning to recognize, all of that.
Taking the second look, taking the bigger picture, taking
I'm
the
so excited.
separating ourselves.
Yeah. Our true soul, okay, want something more than the ego win, where we never ultimately win. Humility and respect guard and direct us in this loop. We honor what serves from our anger, but not what doesn't.
So I mean, right there with the humility and respect. So it's the I never know everything, no
Yeah.
matter what. Even if you know 99.9% of something, when we are dealing with another person, there's always something we don't know. And so having the humility to know that and the respect to ask the question.
Mm-hmm.
You can provide everything you do know and then go, what don't I know?
Mm-hmm.
And understand that this is a collective reality, not an individual reality.
And I love how you use humility. What don't I know? What don't I see? And humility, meaning like the word humus, from the ground, it's very grounding and it's almost very childlike. You're like little, you're in that grounded place, which is more in reality, going, what don't I know? What don't I see? What assumptions am I making?
It's always going to that bigger picture. It's being the
Mm,
observer. It's I am
I love it.
feeling this because of my individual perspective and my attachment to what my outcome expectation or my perception of how someone was treating me. Because I mean, I think that is a big issue we have with people misunderstand, like thinking they're being treated terribly when they're not.
Mm,
Like what is being treated terribly?
mm,
Is someone really being mean to you, or are you just not used to people holding you accountable,
mhm.
right? And so having that balance of how we communicate,
Yeah,
and maybe someone's not as tactful, and then giving them not being triggered and giving them the benefit of the doubt
yeah.
of not go,
Yeah. And I'm going
kind
to
of.
say that this is about our own, this is a spiritual practice for us. And we haven't mastered these things, but we're, every single time we live we re-go into the loop, we get better and better and better. So when we even say the collective, we're also talking about ourselves. Yeah,
100%. We are not
we're in
separate of the
this.
collective.
We're not, these are all, like everything we see, that's part of the infinity loop, is we see ourselves in the other.
Well, all the dragons haven't been slain. These tools are just the armor for us all to collectively slay the dragons.
That's so good. Okay. What we experience is expressed in a way that's open to feedback. Through inquiry, we get feedback on how they experience us. If I
Being
just,
held accountable.
but if I just, that, and I just want to celebrate our relationship, how the infinity loop completely changed our lives and our relationship.
Well, it
I
saved our
mean,
relationship. We pretty
it
much
resurrected
we
it.
were going for a no relationship.
Yeah. And we are
And
now best
that
friends
best buds.
because of the infinity loop. It's powerful, it's beautiful, and it's love. It takes intention and conviction. It feels so damn good and it's so damn effective.
Amen.
Mm-hmm.
May you be seduced. Desmond Tutu. Hope is being able to see that there is light despite all the darkness, right? It's so easy to be cynical and accept that the world is falling apart and not rise to the occasion and be the light in the darkness. And I think this is a podcast for those that want to be the light and help light others, because that is what the infinity loop does. When we gaze on others, we are lighting their flame in the darkness. You are stronger than you believe. You have greater powers than you will ever know.
I'll say the name for you because it's so hard. Antiope to Diana in Wonder Woman. Like, who would know the name Antiope? But she was her trainer.
Right, just unlocking everyone's true potential, right? Is we have a universe inside of us that we just need to open up and release and share with others.
And it's on a different plane than what we think we have access to, right?
Well, that's
That's
what
the
quantum mechanics is kind of
Yeah.
showing us, that, the spiritual realm and the physical are having this dance. And the more you tap into one, the more it presents itself into your life.
The infinity loop reminds us that what we do to another, we do to ourselves. When we hurt another, we hurt ourselves. Staying connected to ourselves helps the other to be connected. By being aware, it creates the most awareness. True inquiry helps us learn and isn't just a trick to get someone to see what they're not seeing. Divine union is connection to everyone and everything. We have lost that awareness that can't be said enough by all who remind us. My intention is to help you step into the infinity loop with more power, grace, and skill.
And I feel like all religions are really ultimately trying to teach that lesson. And I feel like where this is, we're obviously not trying to create a religion, but it's a tool framework to have this religious framework in every aspect of your life.
Yeah, the
Right.
sacred. We would call it it is we call it our religion, but it's a sacred. It's sacred because life is sacred and all everything
Well, it's like
is
the
sacred.
law of one, love your neighbor.
It's divine union.
It's a many different ways of saying, we are all a spiritual being. We are all a loving being and all connected.
Women struggle to communicate with men, and men struggled.
Well, I think it ultimately the struggle comes from projection and not connection, right? I hear so often, well, I'm saying this and he's not hearing me. Well, because you are projecting onto someone, not coming from a place of connection. So a place of connection is even asking questions before maybe you present what you are trying to engage someone with, so that you are engaging them already. Like, instead of just projecting and going, hey, never listen, I don't know why he doesn't understand me. Instead of, you could start with a question that would immediately now engage the person. Right? Instead of, why didn't you do this? How can I help you do this? Instead of, you never do the dishes, or something, it's
right.
Or
Like, the question
off.
The question wouldn't be a judgment in disguise. It would be true inquiry. Hey, I noticed this, like, the coaching done with developing adolescents and children. Hey, I noticed that, your backpack didn't go and
it didn't make it to the hook.
Didn't make it to the. Do you want to tell me about, were you distracted, or what was your thought process on that? Oh, I was going to go back to do it. It's coming. I will argue.
It's coming from a place of love, but also accountability.
Yeah.
How do you hold both? Because I'm going to love you and not judge you, but also still hold you accountable and make make progress in a certain direction.
So I will argue that this magic formula of connection, awareness, and inquiry just works. And that's what we're going to explore. Like it just works. And so I would say, well, women are frustrated with men, but because we haven't always been taught, and we don't know, and we don't know. This is just not taught enough how to communicate from a higher level of mastery,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That's love.
What?
That's loving ourselves and another. Okay, when we hurt another, we hurt our. I already wrote that. Okay. Women struggle. Yeah. In our truest selves, we want to be in humility, but not false humility, in confidence, but not in condescension, in truth, but not in competition.
So it's asking those questions without being condescending, without, it's like
Competing, trying to win.
right.
And I think that's the discipline of breaking habits. So we often feel powerless in our interactions with men and men with women. But we don't realize the power we have when we're grounded, heart-centered, and use our ability to connect and lead. We haven't always been taught what true leadership looks like. Chauvinism is alive in our culture. And even though things have swung the other way in the way women are sometimes given more opportunity, more grace. I mean, there's just been lots of research on this, where women are bashing men. I mean, there's this for just being beautiful masculine qualities, and chauvinism. I experience seeing chauvinism regularly.
And we were talking about kind of the two different aspects of chauvinism, in the sense of intentional putting in a place trying to control someone, and more of a lack of awareness and lack of taught,
Like a habit,
right, a
like how we
habit.
were raised. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would say I think the first one is very much dying out. And I would say that's why people would say, "Oh no, chauvinism isn't real as much," because maybe there's not as blatant of a
Misogyny that you
in
would
the
have in a different culture. Yeah.
right. Well, where it's like, well, yeah, no, you're never going to be more than a receptionist type of thing.
Yeah.
But and I'm going to sexually harass you, and there's nothing you can really say about it.
Yeah.
Versus the inappropriate joke that really didn't come, because they're actually on the same level as you. They don't see themselves better than you, but they are just don't have the tact, or um, again, don't have the awareness of how their actions come off, or can be perceived by a woman.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And
So there is, there's this.
so it's not even making them out to be bad for being chauvinist, but creating the light to go, let's create the environment for that behavior to change. Is
Right.
that
Yeah. And it's unconscious bias. And there's like so much male bashing going on
that it could
where
be almost a form of defense?
yeah, that true. And I was thinking about how you're 33, and we knew someone your age who really desired to be loving and spiritually evolved, and read my book
Mm,
numerous times, and he did not see some of his chauvinism, I think,
I agree.
that he
Yeah.
inherited, and it's like unconsciously inherited, and you just see like the way he was like talking to me and his girlfriend, you're like, whoa, this. So it's always looking at where is that seeping in, and where don't I see it. So I would say
Always going back to the humility,
mm,
right? Like
yeah.
the humility and the respect.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I'm just thinking about a friend of mine, a male friend, who it's been so beautiful growing with him, and his awareness of both hearing how he has suffered at the way women have treated him, and his awareness of where he
What
does.
suffering he's created
Yeah, and
for
where
other
he's
women.
going,
Yeah.
wow, I'm looking at where I do have some unconscious bias toward women, and chauvinistic, and that it has been. It's the both and.
Well,
It's the both
I know
and.
that is something I've had to work over in the sense of my own um, insecurities from my own interactions with women,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's how do I not take my one bad experience from women and project that onto all women as well? And I
That would be
think that's,
discrimination,
and
right?
I think I think that's a natural work process that most people just aren't aware of,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. It's returning to love. Um, companies discriminate against women. A woman will be corrected as a manager if she doesn't show enough empathy, but the same thing would not likely happen to a man.
And I think
I'm
that's,
open to
and I think
looking at that if that's
I think our leaders of the new age that we are moving into uh right now, I think our issue is a lot of times we have men leaders and women leaders, and they're only kind of leading their pack. And I think the real leaders of the future are those that can lead both the males and the females. And I think a lot of that will come from men having more empathy, and I mean, I
yeah.
guess from both parties having more empathy as a
Mm,
leader.
yeah, and learning how to adapt, and yeah, dropping into the yeah.
Well, I think the new age of leader isn't one that controls and dictates, but one that creates an environment for others to flourish. Right?
Yeah.
It's you can be the humble leader. The humble, respectful leader
Mm-hmm.
is what we're looking for and what we're moving towards in
Yeah.
this new age.
I mean, even the way we parent, they can still hold that authority, but it is a way that can bring someone on where their yes is yes, not that their yes is no. And they're just, right? Yeah,
Right,
it's going deeper.
not the yes because they feel manipulated
Yeah.
or that you have a place of power over them,
Mhm.
but yes because they understand why this action benefits them or the company or whatever team
Mhm.
we are a part of.
And I think there are leaders. Oh, I know there's great leaders in the world that are great at developing both men and women.
Oh, I don't think they don't exist. I just think we need more of them, and
Okay,
this is a
good.
call
Yeah.
to the
I'm
rise
always
of
gonna
them.
anytime we ever say
Yeah,
anything that sounds, yeah. Okay,
too absolute.
millions have been spent on consultants and therapists to try to fix the cultures in our companies and relationships. But these investments have left us with huge gaps between our stated values and our practices. We talk east and walk west.
Well, it's very much of the claiming to want one thing, but then your actions speak for
Yeah.
something else,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Uh, like in the dating market, where so many times a woman will say they want a sensitive man, yet when it comes down to it, those aren't the men that women are dating. So what are we
That's
talking
very
about? You're
interesting.
saying one thing, but your
Yeah,
actions are
there's that is
we
so
or we
true.
say, oh, we eat healthy, but then you realize you have fat, fries 3 to 4 times a week,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
It's the
yeah.
what
Our
illusions,
self-deception, yeah,
right,
yeah.
is prevalent in any direction.
We pretend things aren't happening when they are. Unconsciousness comes at a great cost. Women's anger toward patriarchal men is appropriate because of men's unconscious bias toward women. And that is acknowledging a rage that was still in 17 that was coming up. We were listening to this podcast and they were saying, oh, in '09, that was when the big shift happened where women started dominating more of the workplace and this but all I know is there were a lot of women around me in 17 that were like feeling that rage, the anger, and they didn't know. Well, they were feeling both. They were also feeling very supported and loved by men in their lives, and they were feeling the shadow part of the masculine that needs to fall away, and how the shadow of the female part that needs to shadow away was dancing with that and almost enabling that.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of it comes from insecure men,
Mm.
right? When a man doesn't actually feel appreciated, feel valued, feel like they have a purpose, they project that negativity on others by either putting them down, because usually a manager that is being misogynistic towards a woman, from my experience, is usually not necessarily treating the men much better either. We might be uplifting them, but it's usually someone that is projecting their negative feelings about their life onto
Right.
others
And
either.
it's something that may not even be able to be fixed. It's an internal thing. Yeah,
Right,
it's an
right.
internal view of the fragile self.
Yes.
Which, yeah.
Well, it's their own need to do deep spiritual work that
Hmm.
a lot of people aren't doing.
We've been dismissed, not listened to, not taken seriously. That came right from a career clients that I do, career coaching, right out of her company of how she was feeling. And a lot of the women in the company were feeling that way. However, in the grid of emotional intelligence, EQ, it's how we use emotions and feelings to serve, not hurt, that makes the difference.
Right? So it's, even though that might be true, responding with the lashing out, the kind of almost blaming, right, isn't what
Yeah,
helps,
yeah,
is what you're kind of getting
yeah, and
at,
it's
or
not in, I hate to use the term toxic masculinity and toxic femininity, but I think it needs to be visited.
I think it's just a lack of better terms. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
but
it
I
can be
mean,
used.
the toxic masculinity that unfortunately men are thinking that we're referring to masculinity, that's actually, that term's been around for decades, and it's more about the immature masculine that hasn't integrated. But the toxic femininity, we are not talking about that. That's this overly, submissive, um kind of covert, manipulative. uh that's not where we're coming, that's not where I'm coming from on that. um Meaning there's a way of really dropping into your leadership and your power and doing it from so much presence and self-control and self-awareness.
Okay. Yeah, I feel that.
Okay. um The message of our anger often tells us what needs to be honored and protected. It becomes destructive when we allow it to make us less aware.
Right. So
That's
it's
kind
not
of everything.
right. It's not about not being angry. It's about feeling our emotions and expressing them in healthy ways. Right. Especially when you don't get angry at everything. Right. It's one thing if you're a hothead and things bother you all the time. Maybe that's something you need to transcend and work through. But if you rarely get angry, when you're angry, you really should be aware of that, because it's giving you the mess. You shouldn't lash out at someone, but you should go, okay, maybe I need to get myself out of this situation. This
Mm-hmm.
isn't serving me,
Mm-hmm.
because anger isn't something that is helpful
Mm-hmm.
for us.
And it doesn't mean that we are expressing what we are in anger. We feel it, but does not mean it comes in that tone. It does. It gets filtered through far more presence and awareness before it's expressed, which I
Right.
would
Well,
say you
that's
are really have grown in, and it's so beautiful to see.
well, that comes from taking the second, having the tools. Do I need to do a 30-second breath exercise? Do I need to put my head under cold water to just cool down? Like, do I need to ask more questions?
Hmm.
Have the humility.
How do I shift this energy that is so strong that makes me feel like I have to offload it? What kind of stillness do I need to go to to gather more perspective?
Well, I'm not trying to hurt others with my anger,
Yeah, it's
right?
so beautiful to see. I see like your infinity loop practice,
Thank you.
and it's, yeah, it's
Thank you.
really, yeah. It takes the contemplative mind to hold the disturbance about the behavior we see in another, and at the same time see that person as one who deserves respect. We think what gives us the ego hit is the only way, but in reality, connection, awareness, and inquiry give women and men a greater jolt of juice.
What's more fulfilling, right? It's getting the yes, yes, not the yes, no.
We're that practice of connection, awareness, and inquiry helps us drop into our truest identity, which is love.
Mm.
It's like, it's this dropping in, it's dropping into the infinity. You go, that's why that feels good, which was the last line of the last chapter. It feels so damn good and it's so damn effective. It is magical. It helps us gain insight and innovate while detecting and correcting error. We're able to attract and retain talent and likely be more effective in our relationships. As we tap into our own abundance, we're able to bring that abundance to our organizations and leaderships. That's what you were saying. I think the insecurity that can so happen in men and women, but they're not, when we are disconnected from our abundance.
Well, there is the natural issue in most businesses, also like the flaw of people usually getting uh risen to a position that is higher than their skill set.
Mm.
And a lot of times they don't rise to that occasion, right? Like there's the whole issue of you're really good at salesperson, so then they raise you to be a manager of salespeople, but you're not really good at managing people.
Yeah, or
And so
developing them.
right,
What I
and
would call developing.
so now there's the insecurity of that can come out, and that's
Mm.
where your unhealthy practices will, because you want to keep that position because you're making more money. It's a
Mm-hmm.
position of power, it's a
Mm-hmm. And then it
position
gets
of
very
prestige,
threatening.
right?
Yeah, very
Because
threatening when you
and
touch
I
on
think
someone's.
that's a natural thing, like that's a regular occurring thing that happens in companies where people get raised to the point of beyond their capability.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's a big cause of it as well, of like
Mm-hmm.
it's not just on the individual, it's uh, another form of insecurity.
Mm-hmm. I love it. We're able to bring that abundance to our organizations and relationships. Leadership is the power to influence others. Amen. To create a learning container, which lifts everyone into a higher level of awareness. Leadership is about structure, direction, and clarity. In the infinity loop model, we create structure, direction, and clarity as we move toward deeper connection, awareness, and inquiry. Here, all that was lost is found. It's how we shift ourselves that creates the shift in our cultures. Shared language and meaning create a safe container that holds everyone accountable without a culture of blame. That was exactly what you just said a little bit ago about how, like, the whole thing of parenting someone, like, hey, I noticed your backpack didn't get on the hook. That's holding accountability. That is
But I think every,
speaking up.
as a culture, that is what's missing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's missing in both directions, in the sense that people do want to be held accountable. And we as a people need to start holding our institutions accountable.
Mm. A learning container is a byproduct of creating safety. Okay, safety. That is a hot, complicated phrase now. And that does not, do you want to, well, it does not mean, let's be clear, it does not mean that we have to police everyone's language. We can all learn to speak with more.
It's not about you not being uncomfortable, it's about you not being bad.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like
Mm,
we're not making you bad because we are calling out maybe bad behavior,
mm-hmm.
but you are still held accountable. And that is why
And
we're
that could feel it could feel unsafe,
right,
but really what it is, it's uncomfortable.
right.
So I'm going to jump to this quote by Martha Beck, who's this brilliant coach. And she says, when we first go to stillness and we desire to be more connected than separate, then we can say anything to the other and we won't hurt them or harm them.
I feel like that's a lot of words too. When you're no longer projecting, you're using your language to
Mm-hmm.
connect, right? So when you're coming from a place of love, your holding someone accountable will be felt with love because they know you aren't shaming them,
Mm-hmm.
belittling them. You are trying to empower them and encourage them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's not quote unquote these safe spaces where everyone is n- so fragile, but there is a safety where
Well, I feel like the safety
because
comes
the
from
respect,
the
right?
humility
The
and the
humility,
respect.
respect, the curiosity, the connection. Like if you have awareness, if you have inquiry and you're really practicing the skills of inquiry, it can be uncomfortable. There can be anger. Stuff could come up. It could someone could feel very vulnerable. It could feel all those things, but it's technically not unsafe.
Well, because even when we're holding accountable, we still come from a place of humility to empower the person to now hold themselves accountable,
Mm,
right? Or we write or provide more information.
mhm.
They can either go, okay, really, I had to just run to the restroom, or
Right.
right, or you're right, mom. I wanted to play with my toys and I didn't put my backpack up. I'll put it up now.
Yeah. And that's where the title of this chapter, May You Be Seduced, would be that's the seduction, is that you are which in the purest of way, you would say the sacred is seducing us to always become a growth mindset and to go to a higher level.
It creates the
It's
environment for both parties to rise to their best self in every situation.
Mhm. Some may be cynical and don't believe in infinite possibilities. From Alice in Wonderland. Alice laughed. There's no use trying, she said. We can't believe impossible things. I dare say you haven't had much practice, said the Queen. When I was your age, I always did it for half an hour a day. Why, sometimes I'd believe as many as 6 impossible things before breakfast. This kind of believing requires us to become childlike, to let go of our smug certitude and be willing to believe in the magical world of the infinity loop. There's no other way but through this rabbit hole. However, the infinity loop will not reach someone who is a narcissist, sociopath, or has untreated borderline personality disorder. If someone doesn't show genuine empathy or cannot transcend their ego, what I teach won't work. This model is a way to turn on someone's empathy, not cater to their ego.
And it also helps you identify those people when they don't step in, when you create that environment and you go, hey, I'm learning these tools, why don't we work on it like this? And their unwillingness is usually a very clear sign of these types of behavior
Yeah.
because it's
Yeah. And I would say, we're even moving, we're not, I'm not advocating for us to be diagnosing people, which
of course not, of
as you know,
course
like
not.
not no, but it's good to say because there is this diagnosing going on. Oh, he's a narcissist. Oh, he's a narcissist. Oh, he's a narcissist. You know, and I like to use the language of wow, it really appears they would score really high in narcissism. Like, and you repeatedly see this, even the term borderline personality disorder is now up for question of going, is that really a personality disorder if people grow out of it, and how much is it from trauma? And so it's
So I would just say it's the tools though to protect yourself from people that like you said would score high on those
yeah,
things, right? So you can go, okay, they might not be that, but let me maybe alter how I interact with them, or be even more of like, I need to, if I can, step away from this person. This is,
yeah,
someone that is not serving me. This is someone that is not helping me in my infinity loop journey.
yeah, because I would say the two things. The reason I said this, and I say it a couple times, is it's really important for us to not fall into what I call ooey gooey spirituality, which is this magical, not in the magical infinity loop, but this magical belief that somehow we can chant around and dance around and excuse very dangerous behavior
Not being able to love someone's narcissism away.
away. Yeah. And to be putting ourselves, we are never saying putting ourselves in situations that are really unhealthy. And at the same time, the better we get at these skills and we get into that presence and that more of the secure, infinite self, someone who may have appeared not willing to be in the infinity loop could all of a sudden go,
Rise
oh,
to the occasion.
I get it, because your capacity to love increases. And I'm just noticing that in myself. I'm like, whoa, my capacity to have what I now call 360 empathy, to have more presence, is truly like a Jedi master raising that person's awareness. Like it's healing their trauma. They are co-regulating because I am rising.
When your presence, I think, brings the best out in people so much. And I believe that is what the infinity loop can do. As we step into it more, it's easier and easier to bring the best out in people, because you are, like we said, we're coming from love. We do always want to come from love, but sometimes the most loving thing is being holding someone accountable, not being ooey gooey lovey. That is how we show up and provide love to create the change that changes the world.
Yeah. And there's something you just said that was, what did you just say a second ago that was so, what did you say a second ago?
About how sometimes the most loving thing is not
What did
being
you say
nice.
right just before then? It was, it was so important. That's okay. I'll come back to it.
Well, we are love.
It because it creates safety. That's what it is. That's what it is. That ability to be that presence, which is who we are, is love. There is some safety that is created in the other person where their defenses can drop. Even very traumatized, defensive men who have been like so attacked by women and women's trauma, I have just noticed going, wow, they feel safe enough.
Because you're seeing them. They feel seen.
They feel seen with the infinity loop eyes, and they feel loved, and they feel that you are on the same team, which is the infinity loop couple.
Well, that's one of my.
You are on the same team.
That's a phrase I love to say is life is a team sport.
I love it.
We sometimes forget because it's so much encouraged about individual accomplishments and what are you doing as a person. But I think whether we're talking about our emotions, our accomplishments in life, just surviving from one day to the next, it is all a team sport.
Yeah, I love it. I use the term false self and true self the way Thomas Merton used them. He was known for, he was a Trappist monk who was known for bringing contemplation into the West in the 20th century and really integrated so many beautiful things from Eastern spirituality, which would be more connected to the roots of Western spirituality, the contemplative, the desert mothers and fathers. Okay, so Merton used false self as our ego construct, our identity, our small identity, and true self as the nothingness that transcends our ego, our identity. In that nothingness, beyond our stories and accomplishments, is a place where we're greater than we think we are. It's the me that was before I was born and the me that will never die, as the Buddhists say. It's also something beyond that. It's an integration of all that we are in this life. We transcend and include, as Ken Wilber teaches. Our spiritual growth has more to do with becoming who we already are in our true selves. So some people use, again, this is just language. Some people use true self and soul as the same. And that's why I'm going, okay, it's somehow an integration of all that we are in this life. But it is not, and you said this so well, it is not the small self that is passing away. It is the deeper identity, which is love. So it's like we build the ego container, right, to get along with the world. And then we start to think we are our ego
Well,
container.
or there is this phrase of ego death, as if ego ever is truly dead. To me, it's a form of, I don't like even using the word ego control, because that comes from a place of manipulation, but maybe ego understanding, which creates this dance of, I am not my ego, but I understand the purpose of my ego.
Yeah.
I am not going to operate from my ego, but I will use my ego to be a better operator, because there are values to our ego when it's not running the show.
Beautiful. So, and there's confusion between the spiritual and the psychological place of where the ego is, right?
Well, it's in a kind of both.
Right. But sometimes they'll go, wait, there's confusion because we need the psychological ego. But then ego is, when it is coming from ego, it is the separate self. It is not in that connected place.
Well, everyone should feel like the most badass person on the planet. And also, everyone should be as humble to understand that there is no one above you, and you should wash anyone's feet.
Yeah,
Right?
that would be what
you are the
Deepak-
most
yeah.
badass person on this planet. And also, there's no one above you, and you should be willing to wash anyone's feet.
Because the badassness lives in you and lives in all of us.
Yeah. Well, because we are
yeah.
a soul.
Yeah,
I mean,
the
it's
infinite
badass
self.
to be a soul.
Yeah. I love it. My waking up to deeper love and freedom came in layers. I think I'd found my source, but then it got even better. It was the great seduction toward the dying of the small me that gave me greater life. Once it's been done to us, we become the great seduction for the world. I would say there is, like, when they say an ego death, it's like detaching from, we are letting some things die that we were so attached to that it does feel like death.
Well, because
like dying before you die.
Because the ego doesn't have the humility, right? The ego is the thing that causes you to go, I have all the information. This person did something terrible. Let me vomit on them. All the terrible things that I think they did. Instead of coming from a place of love, accountability, and inquiry.
And that's the humility part, because every day, I love what Richard Rohr talks about, who's, I consider my spiritual father. He goes, we learn how to love well by not loving well. And every day I see,
by making the mistake of where we could love better.
I see, there you go. I wasn't in the infinity loop there. There I wasn't in connection. There was my old habit. There I was trying to win. There I was trying to take care of myself, but not in a place of elegance and intelligence while loving well.
But this is where then we need to have the forgiveness of ourselves, and where we can then have forgiveness for others, right? To go, when we notice all the ways that we didn't love well, we then have forgiveness for all the ways that others don't love us well.
Yeah, so true. I don't believe we'll lead effectively without learning how to love well while practicing elegant and intelligent self-care. May you be seduced.
Thank you so much for joining us on our first podcast of the Infinity Loop group. Till next time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.